Hello everyone and welcome to today's presentation on a tale of two formats, creating content with Word and DITA XML simultaneously. I'm Les Burnham, I'm CEO of Stilo, and our presenters today are Catherine Long and Rich Perry from Varian Medical Systems. And I'd just like to say welcome back to Rich and Catherine. They presented with us before, I think last October time. And just to say that today's presentation is a rerun of a talk given by Catherine at the CIDM DITA North America conference last April in Reston, Virginia. I know it was well received. I sat in on it myself along with some colleagues. It was, I thought, a great presentation, and this is a great opportunity for us to be able to share the experience again today, along with Rich's participation as well. So before we start, I'd just like to go through some sort of standard housekeeping points, which many of you will have heard before. Just let you know that all attendees will be muted for the duration of the webinar, and if you'd like to present any questions or submit questions to the Q&A panel in the meeting window, that would be good. Address them to Helen Owens-Pope if you can, please, and we'll look to address them at the end of this session. If you have any technical difficulties in terms of sort of sound quality or logging on, whatever, then just drop a chat note to Helen again. And just let you know that, as usual, we'll be running a survey at the end of the session to gather feedback, and we'd very much appreciate it if you can take a few minutes of your time just to complete that, and we can all learn from it. So thanks very much for that, and today's presentation has been recorded, and we'll send you a link in the next day or two as soon as we get it back from the WebEx system. So hopefully we'll have a good session today. I'm sure we will. Just to let me carry on with some introductions. First of all, Stilo, for those of you that don't know us, we're a public listed company listed on London Stock Exchange. We're essentially a technology company. We develop a product called OmniMark, which is a content processing language used by developers to develop applications in content processing. We provide Migrate, which is a cloud conversion service, and we now provide AuthorBridge, which is a web-based DITA authoring tool for SMEs with no knowledge of DITA or XML. So we have quite a wide range of customers in the DITA community that we've dealt with over the years, and Varian, I'm pleased to say, is one of those. So I'd like to first introduce our speakers before going further. And first of all, Catherine. Catherine's a senior technical writer. She's been with Varian for 5 years now, and she's brought in to assist the services documentation department with authoring standards and the move to DITA. Her ongoing challenge is to design system architecture and provide training for 100 SMEs who write documents as only part of their busy schedule. And as you can see from a photo, Catherine's relaxation is to immerse herself in books, in particular the worlds of Shakespeare, P.J. Wodehouse, and Oscar Wilde. Moving on to Rich. Rich is the Manager of Product Servicing Information Development at Varian, leading a team responsible for processing technical servicing content. And as you can see from his profile, Rich regards technical training, curriculum development, and product support as an adjunct to his day job. I know that Rich also enjoys another passion, which is motorbikes. He's a man who doesn't mind getting his hands dirty, and it's a very genuine passion in technical information that results in Rich presenting to us today. So before handing over to Rich and Catherine, let me first just sort of set the scene, if I may, and this might be familiar to many of you attending today. So you decide to move to publishing with DITA XML. It all appears wonderful. You purchase a CMS, you select an editor, you create an information model, and share the plan with your authors. This is great. You begin to analyze documents, you get a style sheet designed, prepare and schedule author training, but then problems and issues of resistance start adding up. There are so many different document types and so many global authors who are not tech writers. You begin to realize that unless the company can stop needing to provide service installation for 3 to 6 months, you're not going to be able to flip the switch and move to DITA all at once. So what do you do? Over to you, Rich and Catherine, to explain.
Hello. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Catherine and I will be presenting this as a team, so we'll be passing back and forth the slides, and hopefully you get a lot of information during presentation, so thanks for joining. So Varian Medical System, just a couple quick slides about us, just to give you a frame of reference. So Varian is a global medical device, which of course is FDA regulated. We, Catherine and I, along with our team, work for a group called Product Support Engineering, and our basic workload is service documentation for repair and installation of our devices, and we probably have about 3,500 global internal users working for Varian or as agents, as well as some customer documents that we produce. So the lion's share, of course, is internal service documents. Most of our document types require security. We have a lot of third-party pressure with our service organization, so we try to protect our intellectual property, and so all those documents are PDF'd and are secured at the point of publication. Many of our documents support the design history file. So once we ship this device out of the factory, we need to maintain a record of that device from its birth to its death. That could be 10, 15, 20 years later. Most documents that we produce are time sensitive, and they need to be released in a very timely manner to support issues or problems in the field that our customers might be facing. Of course, DITA is in process, and we're going to talk a little bit about that whole process during these slides also. As far as our basic document statistics, we have about 100 content developers, authors, providing information into my team. Today we have about 10 Microsoft Word templates, which gives us a total of 60 document types. In all, we produce about 700 new documents per year, and we revise another 800 of our existing library of documents. Along with Catherine and myself, we do have 3 document process admins that process documents for final publication and distribution. The main thing I think as you think about our transition to DITA, we never know when we come into the office what type of document we might need for a particular issue today, tomorrow, and so it's a very dynamic environment with a lot of ad hoc authoring and distribution of those documents. And I'm going to pass it on to Catherine.
So what you can see how many documents we have. So we obviously, the whole documentation industry is heading toward DITA, so we decided to join along. And, we started off very enthusiastically, especially since there's another department at our company, and they're GPSS, they're our Global Product Support, and they do all the customer-facing documentation. So they had started their DITA project a year or two before us, and they had purchased a CMS and picked out an authoring tool. And so, we were pretty excited to just kind of jump on board, and it sounded like it was going to be such a great project. They had already gotten to a point where they created their information model and all kinds of things, and they were picking a date within a year or so to flip their switch with one of the releases that was going to come out. So at that point, we did really think, hey, this is great. It's going to be really easy for us, and we thought it would fix many of our problems. We hired a company and had a boot camp in our department. We picked out a document type that we wanted to start with, and we began planning to incorporate the new Varian branding, which had just come out within, I'd say 3 months of us starting our project. So we got very enthusiastic and excited, and it seemed like it was going to be the best of projects. But can you go to the next slide, Rich? It turned out it wasn't. Our expectations were a little bit too high. We had planned moving to DITA too quickly. We hadn't really gone through and analyzed our documents quite enough, and we assumed that we could use the existing GPSS style sheet. But once we started looking at the differences between our documentation and their documentation, it just wasn't going to work. We realized that in our enthusiasm, we had chosen a document type that originally we thought, oh, this will give us a really wonderful return on our investment and show everything we can possibly do with DITA, but we realized that we were really starting off with our most difficult document. It's one that gets translated into many languages, and that was just too tough. We overthought that. And we really didn't do enough document analysis. Our original training, we had a lot of managers and some other authors who don't author that much attend the training. And then we realized that we never had any time, a particular time that we could really say, hey, we're going to flip the switch for that release or anything, because as Rich explained, we never know what documents we're going to have when. So that all those things made it a little difficult for us. Back to you, Rich. Uh-oh. Do we lose Rich's sound, maybe? But this is how we
sorry.
felt. Okay.
Yep. So we did know we wanted to get to the other side of this gap from Word to DITA. But as we started our first couple projects and our training, we saw that we were on a little bit of unstable ground. And as Catherine and I analyzed what we're doing, we oftentimes thought of this Tacoma Narrows Bridge. This is from 1940, this particular one. So we thought we had to change our tack a little bit. And so the problems that we faced for about 2 years, we tried to move forward with the idea of flipping a switch and moving from Word to DITA XML. And we realized that, even though a lot of organizations do this, it doesn't necessarily work for our service organization. Probably the main reason is service never has a schedule that's quite as concrete as some publication houses. We don't have a project date in the future that we can say, okay, starting with this project date, all of our documents going forward are going to be DITA. So it had to be kind of a phased-in approach. We also have a rather large author base that we also think we could not train all at once to have everybody start authoring in DITA. The other issue is too many document types. We certainly we need our document types because we have such a variation of service processes, so it's not just user guides or things like that. So there's many types of servicing procedures, and all those document types need to fit into the new DITA XML environment. Also, our resourcing was not quite enough to flip that switch. I think this is very common to many people that we've talked to over the past couple of years at conferences and so on. There is certainly resistance to change. It's a lot of work for our authors that are all very comfortable with Word to make this big move over to a more structured environment and tagging up the content. So at that point, we decided to make a slight change in our strategy. And it's not that we crashed and burned, but we did definitely recalibrate our thought process to make sure that we had a clearer picture for the next time we move forward with our DITA XML conversion.
So
and back to Catherine.
That is when we decided that instead of switching from one format, Word, to another, DITA XML, we would try to slowly transition and maintain publication processes for both of those formats. I mean, it sounded a little daunting at first, but, you know, we already had our Word process in place, so this would just mean making a few adjustments, and then we could kind of transition slowly, and that way we'd be able to bridge these two formats. So part of the reason we made this decision was once we thought about it, we realized that if we did this, we could minimize the disruption of our publication. There would be, you know, if there was a rush document, somebody needed it for a service the next day, we could still get that out in Word. But if somebody had a week or two to get something out, we certainly had plenty of time then to convert it to DITA, kind of do a little test with it. And we could decide whether something was too long or to move forward in the beginning of our process. We also could conduct multiple pilots for different document types to just make sure that they work okay and get feedback from our field service people, what they thought of how we had restructured and how this newer DITA format was producing the document. So that was very helpful to do, to have some pilots to run along and see. It gave us a chance to adjust our style sheet a little bit also during the pilot so that we could move forward with the next document just that much better. This next one I thought is very important, and you know, it's a really big jump for a lot of these authors to go from Word that they've become experts and they're very comfortable with into a CMS with all those panels, and some of it's a little confusing. You know, we have global authors, so they're all over the place, so it was a little hard to get everybody together to train. But being able to introduce some of these concepts, like talk to them about chunking their information in concept, reference, and task, and just letting them know with our new Word templates, we incorporated styles that utilize the terms for tagging. We now have styles that are called menu cascade and user input, and we've given instructions on how to use those in the Word templates. So once they move to the CMS, that part isn't new. It's more just the tool is new, but most of the concepts they've already been able to grasp. And also, especially once we've converted one of their documents, it sure helps a lot when there's a document they can look at instead of starting in the CMS with nothing. This way they can open up one of their own documents that was written in Word that we converted, and they can look at how it's broken up and put into a book map of different topics and how it's been tagged. This also will allow, because we do have a couple of document types that often come from marketing people or other authors throughout the company, perhaps even some from engineering that need to be in one of our document types. So this allows for us to still get contributors from other departments who have no access to the tools. They can give us a Word document and we can convert it. So it can just join the flow, and they don't even need to know. They just move forward with what they've got.
So certainly the plan for the two towers, we looked at our current tool set and look forward to our future tool set. And on the left-hand side there, this desktop tool set, it's rather important part of this transition because, you know, today 100% of our authors know Word. Some of them know how to manipulate Word much better than others. But, you know, the other key thing here is, you know, no matter if we need to hire new staff, hire new service engineers, you know, we're pretty much guaranteed that they come through the door knowing how to use MS Word. So it's almost like a basic tool set that everybody comes into the organization using. The templates that we use help define our document types, give the key information that is needed to complete a certain task. So those templates provide direction, provide continuity, provide key details that need to be in every document. Again, from a regulated standpoint, there's certain aspects that are driven by the regulated side of the business. So MS Word is definitely a very important key tool right now that everybody's very comfortable with. Once we get that content from the authors, we do use Adobe Pro to convert this to a PDF today, and that's our team's responsibility. We take these Word documents and make sure formatting is good, make sure the authors haven't removed any important information, and then we do our conversion to a PDF. We do a lot of that in that collaboration and this modification, manipulation in SharePoint environments, network drives, emails, and things like this. And then we finally have a in-house or a homegrown e-sign process that we use that our corporate group has developed. So that's our basic tool set to publish. When we look at our DITA XML tool set, as Catherine mentioned earlier, a lot of this was decided before the PSE group, the Product Support Engineering group, our team, started going towards DITA. Although Oxygen, our editing platform, that was actually selected by our team, and the GPSS team also started using Oxygen. Our intent is to have 6 templates. They're not all created yet. As Catherine mentioned on another slide, we're piloting different aspects of our document set. We started with a document that is typically a couple pages long, although some of the documents could be longer. So we start with a very concise document type, not a lot of regulatory impact on that, no translation required, and Catherine developed a template for that particular one. So we do, in upcoming pilots, which are on the horizon, we are going to have to develop additional templates for those document types. Along with Oxygen, we use Antenna House as our conversion, our PDF tool. The CCMS is Ixiasoft, and so we, of course, utilize that for our book maps, workflows. Also, Schematron, which is proved very useful for our counterparts in the customer publication team, but we're still working through our Schematron variables to make sure they work for our environment. So those are 2 towers that we're working within. A little bit more detail about the templates. Again, this transition that Catherine talked about, or this bridging of the gap, we've recently updated these templates, these Word templates, with styles that are named for DITA elements. I mean, if you're used to Word or no Word, of course, there's styling that you can invoke, and heading 1, heading 2, etc. But nothing really is stylized semantically like you would find in DITA. So Catherine developed some stylized some styles that match our DITA environment, and this is, again, a way that we can start to have our authors understand the structured environment of DITA XML. We certainly think that this is going to help with training of our authors or our content contributors, and also we are using Migrate as a tool for our conversions for a lot of our documents, and that is also going to enable us to have pretty concise conversion rules. So we think that's going to be a real big benefit. Our goal was to design our templates, our new templates, to basically look very similar to what our DITA XML output is going to look like. Again, we think this is important with our 3,500 end users out there, the service personnel that are, of course, globally based, different languages as primary languages. So we want to minimize the effects of this transition in the look and feel of the documents. We've also done, restructuring of the content and kind of focus on the end user as much as possible so that the content is appropriate for those end users. A lot of work on the boilerplate content that we find in a lot of documents. I'm sure you guys have the same issues that, over the years, organizations that are looking or evaluating your content say, hey, you need to have this in the content, you need to put this in there, you need to always make sure you have this type of information. So we really took a real close look at the boilerplate to make sure that it was applicable, that it still applied, and it was easy to use, easy to access. And as Casper mentioned earlier, we do want to make sure our documents follow some of the company branding as far as styling of the fonts and colors and things like that. So after we do all this, we do convert and to PDF, and we put that security on these things, and then we post them to an internal database. That's our distribution methodology. All of our service guys around the world have access to our database. With the DITA XML Tower, our intent is to use 6 bookmap templates with some topic templates along with those. Again, this is, the topic templates are kind of the boilerplate information that we will allow our guys or our authors to always have the correct information in there, so they don't remove any of the needed information. So we introduced this by way of review and convert content rather than total immersion. Instead of a new DITA XML author having to start a document from scratch, they've already got a framework that they're used to in Word already. And so those bits and pieces we think are going to really help allow them to understand that content, the final content as it's displayed in a CCMS Oxygen environment. The templates allow us to provide instructions within those templates, and so we do have quite a few instructional comments or sentences, or sometimes they might be entire paragraphs on instructions on how to complete the template information. And of course, none of that's generated in the output. We think that this gives us our customized and certainly a more simplified environment for our authors. The other thing that we do want to do is have focused internal training just on certain aspects of the environment. I mean, if you look at Word is complicated enough, but if you introduce Ixiosoft with Oxygen plugins, we think that you can drown in all the icons that you see in some of these environments. So I do think that having these templates will allow us to focus our internal training on the key items. Another thing we try to do during these template creations, not only in the Word templates that we've modified, but also our DITA XML templates, we wanted to get input from our early adopters and key authors to make sure we're providing them the environment that they feel comfortable with and provides the end user with the appropriate information. In the end, we're going to generate PDFs and post these to internal database just like we do. So our publication pipeline is going to be kind of unchanged in the DITA environment. And I'll pass it back to Catherine.
Thank you, Rich. We did, it did help. That seemed to be a little bit of a motivation that we started to tell people just on that last point, that if they were an early adopter and took some training and learned how to use the CMS a bit, they would have more input into what the documents look like and the project in general. So that helped a bit with a few people as far as them thinking, okay, I do want to get involved and help create this. So, but one of the really important tools that we've discovered that's allowed us to really bridge these two formats without making it the most difficult thing. You know, if we had to by hand take every Word document and move it into DITA XML, that would be quite difficult. But we discovered Stilo's Migrate tool, and it's working wonderfully well for us. In fact, we really couldn't bridge this project without it. It really makes it convenient. We do a little pre-processing and clean up some particular preparation steps of removing pieces from our Word document that are going to be in the template form, topic templates in the CMS. So there's a little bit of cleanup, and then we push our Word document right through Migrate. Most of the styles that we've incorporated, Stilo's Migrate works wonderfully well, picking up on those and using the same tag. So if someone has used the style user input or file name in Word, when we convert it through Migrate, it comes out tagged as user input or file name. It works right out of the box. We did have to create some customized rules, and that was a little bit confusing for us in the beginning, but Stilo gave us great support, taught us in a few different sessions how to create rules, and then when there were some more complex rules, like converting definition lists and things like that, figuring out how to tell it where to start and where to stop and things like that, they worked with us and created the rules for us. So this works very well. They also, some of our bookmap templates use a chart instead of to contain the topics rather than a map within the bookmap, and they went ahead and created it so the output comes out of Migrate in a chart. So it's really simple, just fits right into our template that we made in DITA. It also brings in the images for us. It gives them all titles and puts them right in place. That really simplifies things. We don't have to bring those in ourselves and place them and scale them. And then there's really minimal post-conversion work. We just need to kind of generate the output and check and make sure everything's been tagged the right way. There are a couple things that we just, because we're regulated, there are a couple things where we have to have our hazard statements work a particular way, so we do need to change that. But that's about it. Otherwise, we just put a Word document in and Migrate converts it for us. So what Rich's team does, the 5 people on his team, we get as we've said, the authors or content developers submit a Word document. We analyze it, and one of the things we go by is how soon do they need this. If we're really busy or our team's really busy and they need it tomorrow, then we just publish it in Word. Although we have gotten some Migrate documents done the same day, so because the conversion is that smooth. But we do take a look and see what kind of tables and things like that it has. But we do, then this team, and there are basically 3 people, prepares the document and uses Migrate to convert and then imports it in, takes that and imports it into the CMS. We've developed a work instruction for that. One of the members of the team wrote up a process for how to complete this Migrate conversion, which it's pretty simple, but there is a little bit, as I said, of post-conversion work and a little pre-conversion work. And then also to get people, once we've converted the document, to have someone review it. The way we're working right now, we get our PDF out of our CMS, and that's what we're using for review currently. So if someone has a lot of changes to make, we need to convert that back to a Word and then reconvert it through Migrate. And so sometimes that can be a bit of an issue. We're starting to move forward with more people reviewing in the CMS. So that's definitely part of our moving forward strategy. And I'm going to pass it back to Rich because he's going to go through these nice workflows with you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time. These are up, and you can kind of take a look at it. And if you would like to reference this, you're of course going to get the slides. I mean, so a couple of key things we've talked about that play into this flow is number one, we're doing pilots, right? So we're starting with one document type, and we're running a pilot to produce a DITA XML on that. You know, Catherine mentioned on the previous slide this analysis. So even though we're running a pilot of producing DITA content, we're still leaving ourselves the capability to process this in our current Word environment. So the pilot isn't a light switch where we've said, okay, we're going to produce all this document types in DITA. So every document comes in, we do a quick analysis. You know, my team gets that into their inbox, and we analyze that for its, you know, timeliness, whether it's a rush document and so on, as Catherine mentioned. And so once we say that we are going to produce this document in DITA, we do some pre-processed stuff for migrate that we've developed. As Catherine mentioned, one of our team members has developed the processes for getting it ready for migrate conversion. You know, one thing to mention here is Catherine's new templates will hopefully reduce that pre-conversion by having things marked up appropriately, and then changing those migrate rules to convert that efficiently. We do our migrate conversion in the cloud, and then we import that into our CMS, where we might have to do post-processing. I mean, I think we always have to deal with some level of post-processing of that document in order to publish it. You know, what happens now, though, is probably the most difficult part is after we start creating this content in DITA XML, you know, the authors can no longer directly edit that content in Word. So it is kind of a unique process now where we actually send that CMS created PDF out as a document for markup, and if there's major changes in the review process, then that can be problematic as far as having my team edit that in the DITA environment, since the authors are not quite ready to do that yet. So again, you can take a look at this table or this flow diagram when we pass that slide around, or slide deck after the presentation. One thing we didn't think too much about prior to our pilot project, our first one, was revisions. You know, and so since we've taken these documents, we publish a document in DITA XML. So if we then need to revise that document at some future date, which of course on one of our opening slides, I mean, we revise more documents than we actually published the first time. So 800 documents compared to 700 documents. So that's without a doubt, these documents can be revised you know, very quickly. I mean, within a couple weeks or a month, we might need a revision. So this is also something that we need to overcome as far as a process. You know, we basically have two methodologies. If there's major edits, then we will possibly convert this to Word from PDF and send that back to the content developer and have them edit directly in Word. Once they develop in Word or edit in Word, we go through our analysis process again to see if we need to do a new migrate conversion, or maybe my team can make direct edits in the CMS. If there's minor edits, then what we can do is we can actually edit it right in the CMS. That might be my team. In the future, this is kind of our phased approach. We do think that the authors, instead of creating a brand new document, their first crack at the DITA environment is going to be editing their content in the CMS. So they don't have to start with structuring book maps and that type of thing. They can actually just edit created content. So document revision was a tough and is tough today in these pilots. It is not the most difficult thing to manage, but my team is doing a fantastic job doing that. Back to Catherine.
So here we have an example of the cover page for one of our document types, a technical tip. And as you can see on the left, we have the DITA version, and on the right, we have the Word version. And I think right now we have those pretty well matched up. The Word version on the left, I don't know why there's no numbering in the sections, but we do have numbering for the sections, and we do have an older icon there at the bottom. But basically, you can see we matched up the colors and the styles. In Word, I think this is a table, and the purpose and those categories there, that's a table, whereas in DITA, it's a definition list that we've given a particular output class to, so it shows up that way. But that's basically the new look and feel for our documents. These used to be in boxes, and we know that kind of matching DITA in Word, we're limiting ourselves a little bit with what DITA can do, but for now that it's actually helping with our training and our process. So we figure if we get everything over to DITA and moving pretty smoothly, then we can expand what we do in the DITA environment. So this is also kind of for you to look at later if you want. As I just mentioned, we're not using everything that DITA offers. But how important is that at first when you're using this? I mean, we are doing some conditionalizing with one of our templates. And as I said, if there's anything that's really that advantageous, we will bring that into our project at some point later. As Rich mentioned, we have some gaps in our review and revision process. There are some table limitations in XML. The way we've overcome those so far is putting some output classes and creating some customization in our style sheet. So that's actually moving forward pretty well. And then Stilo's help, we've created rules that apply those output classes and some of those customizations to the table. So that's already taken care of some of the extra tagging and attribute assigning that we would need to do. It is done automatically. One of the other problems, as we mentioned before, is the resistance, right? So there's a lot of pushback on the fact that these people are experts with Word, and they're very used to just being able to work in an environment where what you see is what you get. So it's a little difficult for them to work in the CMS and not see the final product when they're working on it. That seems to be quite a hardship for many of our authors. And also, they're not happy with not being able to control the page break. So just the fact that the style sheet controls that, we've had to do some adjusting. A couple times we've updated our style sheet to create new page breaking rules, but I think we've got that down, so at least people are a little bit happier with that. So our future plans are, we're looking to add a simplified editor. Because of their wonderful support so far, we are looking at AuthorBridge, which is Stilo's new simplified authoring tool. We've checked out a few others. The GPSS team is also looking for something, so we're kind of working together to test some of those out. We want to continue to train our authors, because I think we mentioned we have 100, but I'm not sure whether we talked about that there's so many of them are globally located. And we have like 2 or 3 people in one country and 2 or 3 people in another. It's a little difficult to get boot camps or get training sessions handled. So we've worked with other companies, and now we've kind of got it down, so we think we can do more of it internally and maybe make it a little bit more one-on-one sometimes. Certainly for teaching people how to review, we can actually do a share screen one-on-one session and teach them how to review in the CMS. That's very helpful. And we get to, as Rich said, we don't have that many document types in here. We're bringing them in one at a time. So we move forward with a pilot of each type and slowly bring them in instead of trying to do one big, here we go. We also have the possibility in the future of, as everyone knows with DITA XML, you're able to have all these different output types. And that's really been a motivating issue for some of our authors, too, is to show them and tell them, with this single source content, if you take the time to learn how to do this, we can create a PDF or a web page or, eventually some kind of mobile device documentation. So we're really looking forward to that being a big part of our process. And as I mentioned before, Word can be used for casual contributors and maybe even new employees. I think Rich might have mentioned that. Rather than bringing in a new employee who's having to take trainings and learning our processes, and then they'd have to learn how to use the CMS and Oxygen and all that. They can kind of slowly transition from Word to that because we'll still have this process in place. I mean, we do want to definitely move to DITA XML as our primary thing, but we're kind of thinking we might keep this use of Migrate around for numerous years just because it's going to be so helpful with our processes. And I think
and finally, just to finish up, so there's my email and Catherine's email. So if you have any following questions, feel free to contact us and let us know how we can help.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Catherine. Rich, if you wouldn't mind retaining control, because I have a couple of slides at the end, and perhaps you could forward them for me when we finish questions, if you wouldn't mind. But a couple of questions have come in whilst you were talking. One of which is, what were the biggest drivers to convert from Word to DITA? Was it content reuse?
Yeah, I would say that was one of the largest, is content reuse, but it also is just the fact that this new technology can do so much, and we do have very state-of-the-art equipment that they're actually putting ThingWorks, and a lot of communication can begin happening between our equipment and our documentation if we move to DITA. So in the future, we're looking toward even being able to control things like the documentation if you're using it on a mobile device or a computer on location. It could stop someone from moving forward if they haven't powered down or, things like that. Mm-hmm. So we're really looking forward to more digital documentation and interactive documentation.
So, and just to add on to that reuse question, we also have a large training organization that trains both our service personnel and our customers. And, they are very heavy users of product support engineering's documents for those training classes. And so they do plan in the future. They're not on the program yet or a project path yet to move to DITA XML so that they can also reuse our content more efficiently in the training environment. And the final thing, of course, is translations. We are, historically, we've not had to translate a lot of documents due to the fact that we produce internal documents, and our service engineers that we hired were required to read and understand English, and so we had that model for many years. Varian's been making these medical devices for 50 years, let's say. We've been in this business, and that, of course, has been changing, right? So we have more and more pressure to provide local languages. Certain countries are more problematic, like Japan and France. So we're doing a lot more translations in those for those two languages, and we just see that as continuing to expand as far as the requirement for our service documentation. So I think that's also another driver to move to DITA XML.
Right, thank you. And question from myself as well. There's obviously sort of very understandable issues for adoption and barriers to overcome with authors and when they've got to learn new concepts. And it's a bit of a journey, as you say, to move people along. Do the authors themselves see the benefits of, are they seeing any benefits in this move to DITA, or do they see it as a burden or an overhead for themselves?
It's an interesting question. I would say, and Catherine might have some additional comments here. I mean, but I would say that most authors see this as a burden, and that's not because they don't. It's not because they don't understand the benefits of maybe producing HTML in the future, or this type of thing, or the Internet of Things. I mean, we're all dealing with very technical engineers that are creating this content, and so they're tied into the world that we now know, and I do think some of those advantages of DITA XML, do come through. But the fact remains that they're doing their job today, and they're creating content, and this transition to DITA is in addition to their, as we always talk about, their day job, right? And so they're problem solving, they're traveling to site, they're creating content, and so this is just one more pressure on their busy schedule, and that's where I think this piloting kind of really benefits, because we can slowly introduce it as opposed to all at once. One thing Catherine mentioned was, instead of training somebody how to create content directly in DITA, our next phase, we want to show them how to mark up and comment, review the content in the environment. So a slower introduction to it, so that they can start picking this up without a direct switch over from Word to DITA. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Catherine, there.
Just to kind of briefly add that I do think that some of the people who have a little bit of pushback are definitely more vocal than the others. I think we do have a lot of people who've asked, okay, when can I start using this tool, and kind of wanting to jump on board early. So there are a few that are just not always as vocal.
Yeah, I think it's very understandable. I mean, from an authoring perspective, you can see that a lot of the benefits of DITA actually apply to the enterprise rather than necessarily the individual author. And I guess that's one of the issues everyone faces when moving to DITA. Yeah. We have another question, a bit more detailed. The question reads, will you still be using Oxygen? I'm wondering if you could share what products we need in addition to just the Stilo conversion tool. Sorry for the dumb question, smiley face. Also, what was your process in choosing Stilo rather than, say, Madcap Flare? So, bit of an, I think, detailed question. I don't know if you want to answer that one at this point or take that offline somewhere.
Well, the second part of the question, maybe you can repeat the first part of the question, but our sister organization, the customer documentation team, actually selected Stilo, probably a year before we started using it. So, some of our team members in the organization had experience with Stilo, so they went through a selection process. So, unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure, what other vendors they might have looked at, to be perfectly honest. So, you know, it was one of our benefits of having early adopters or early users in our customer side, customer documentation side. So we just went with the flow and used some of the tools that they used.
Yeah, they used Migrate to move over, 500 documents or something, all within a period of 6 months to a year or something like that. And I think they had done the selection process, and we were lucky enough to just kind of jump on board with the good tool they selected.
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe the first part of the question, Les, I don't know whether you want to repeat it or whether we can try to address that.
Will you still be using oxygen, question mark? Well, I thought you would address that, really. And it says, I'm wondering if you could share what products we need in addition to just the Stilo conversion tool. So I think that was covered, actually, in the slides.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, you do need some kind of DITA XML authoring tool, but you don't necessarily need a CMS. You can use SharePoint or other things. Well, I've talked to companies at different conferences that don't have a CMS and they're moving forward with DITA, but we're lucky enough. We're a large company, and the CMS had already been purchased for us, and it is very handy. It's a wonderful tool to have to plug our authoring tool into.
But on top of that, also Oxygen is critical for our templates, right? I mean, it's not critical necessarily, but it's an easy tool to help you create your templates, right, Catherine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Oxygen.
Yeah.
So it's at the moment, I think it's fair to say that oxygen is important, and then you're looking also at other editors like Bridge, which SMEs could use rather than high end.
Yeah. Some of those authors that Rich was talking about who aren't big fans, we're looking for testing out right now some different simplified authoring tools, and Bridge is one of them that we're testing.
Yeah. Okay, and then another, I think, detailed question from one of the earlier slides, actually. Can you give an example of the new style name in the word template? I think that was...
Yeah, so basically what I've done is just taken almost all of the elements that we use to tag something with. I've taken a lot of those and created word styles that have that name. I created a style in the template called user input, and another one called hyperlink, and another one called menu cascade. Now, they don't work, of course, they don't work exactly the way they do in the CMS, but it actually allows us to say to our authors, hey, we're no longer requiring you to remember whether a menu cascade gets bold font, or if user input uses Courier font in 12 point instead of 10 point, that kind of stuff. We're able to introduce them in these word templates to the fact that they can title things or apply the styles according to semantically rather than just using the style itself. So they get to think more about how this would be, what piece of information this is. And the Migrate tool actually converts that automatically. And then when they move into the CMS, they'll be familiar with most of those terms. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does, thank you. And at that point, we have a couple of minutes left, but I think that answers answering all the questions, thank you, that we've had raised. I wonder, Rich, if you wouldn't mind just advancing the slides to the last couple, the questions.
Sure, I can. Sorry.
And then the upcoming conferences, that would be great. Yeah, so it's just the next one. So it's the contact point there, and I just wanted to. We're at the top of the hour, so I just wanted to conclude things and thank everyone for attending today, and thank you, Rich, and thank you, Catherine, for your presentation, which is great as usual. And just to say that we'll be at the at the LavaCon Las Vegas conference in October. If you want to see us there, it would be great. And then we'll be at CMS to the Europe in November. So this is the last sort of Stilo to the Knowledge series presentation prior to the summer break. We'll be coming back again, hopefully in September, October, with the new topics for you to consider, and hope that you'll join us then. So thanks everyone once again for attending today, and thanks Rich, thanks Catherine for the presentations again, and if you wouldn't mind just completing the survey at the end of the session, would appreciate it. Thank you very much everyone, and hopefully talk again soon. Bye-bye.